Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 7th annual and 3rd virtual Anti-Trafficking Summit. My name is Christine Anderson. I'm so excited to see everyone, and I use the word see loosely. I'm going to turn it over to our Commissioner Sheila Poole for opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Christine. I had a chance to look over the agenda. We have a remarkable series of engagements and national and of course our experts from in-state to really lift up this work, right? And we know, you all know, certainly better than I do, just how difficult this work is. The scourge of trafficking of young people continues despite many efforts. And so we know, in partnership with all of you and with our safe harbor partners in every corner of our state, that we need to keep learning and listening to the voices of those who unfortunately have been survivors of trafficking. Just last week, as many of you know, we also here at OCFS run the state's juvenile justice systems. We had 2 young, very young teenage girls run away from their placement, had good reason to believe that they were being held against their will and were being trafficked. And, you know, thankfully, after a number of days and a lot of incredible work by law enforcement, one of the young girls escaped, and, you know, they are now both safe back with us. But it is real. It is in our backyard. It are things that we are experiencing, that you are in counties every day. And we are so happy to have such great partners across the state and across the country. I think one of the things that we're really excited about is lifting up survivor voice over the course of the next 5 days. Right, is those individuals who've been most personally and deeply impacted, who are in an incredible position by virtue of sharing, of having the courage to share their difficult story, that helps us better understand ways to prevent, right? That's always the North Star goal. But then to really understand, for those folks who have been victims, what are the right supports, the right clinical interventions, the right things that we can do to really make sure that we're supporting young people. You know, and finally, I recognize how difficult and frustrating it can be to be deeply engaged in this work, right? No one system alone has all the answers to this. Unfortunately, the traffickers seems like they're always one step ahead of us. And so it takes us coming together as a community, several state agencies, right? All of the counties, our safe partners, so many others, and learning, right, this is a national issue, bringing in the voices and perspectives of other partners across the country. And that's what we're about to do today and for the rest of the week. And I want to just take a minute before concluding to recognize Dr. Nina Alladort, who you'll be hearing from next, and her team, especially Christine Anderson. Thank you, Christine, and your team, and WRI, who's helped us organize this convening. So I hope we can all come together right early on a Monday with open minds, with open hearts, as we continue to challenge ourselves to engage in this very difficult work. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
And now I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Nina Alladort.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm seeing lots of names, and thank you so much, Commissioner Poole, for your consistent support for some of our more cutting edge and difficult conversations that we have had over the years with the field, and really trying to push the boundaries of how to do work within systems that are often uncomfortable with the approach that young people who are really struggling in this space best respond to. So thank you for your leadership and your support for all of the people who are doing the work out in the field, and thank you everybody who is doing the work. This year is 10 years since we started our statewide work, which is really kind of astonishing, right? That we really started Safe Harbor in 2012 with this very small little pot of money and these very small, these 5 counties, and we didn't know what we were doing, any of us really, and we were sort of fumbling through. I think it took us about 4 years to come up with an organized approach to this, and that is mainly because we listened very carefully to the counties that started the work with us. Some of you had been doing it for a long time before, like New York City had been doing this work for quite a while, and places like Buffalo, IIB had been doing this work for many years before we intersected with them. And all of your patients at the county level, while we sort of bumbled our way through how do we train people and what does it look like to have an organized approach. And in the last 10 years, we have really learned so much together about mainly what we don't know. The more we know, the less we know in this area of practice, because as the commissioner said, right, the traffickers are way ahead of us. The technology has changed significantly from what was really primarily Backpage and some chat rooms to every platform now is being exploited. Every platform that can be, even things like Roblox games for children are being exploited by predators, and there still aren't enough safeguards in place, either at the company level or even nationally. So I just want to start by thanking everybody who is here and thanking everybody who's been doing this work and really acknowledging the young, brave people who have walked down this path with you of really trying to figure out how to come back to themselves in their lives. I've been thinking a lot about what a trauma-informed response really looks like. And this was, you know, in action. What is, we use the words a lot, trauma-informed, trauma-informed, trauma-responsive, but what does that mean? And I was really spurred in part by an email, very timely email from our colleague and friend, Dr. David Crenshaw, who has been doing tremendous work at Children's House of Home of Poughkeepsie for many years and really has an incredible capacity to think about therapeutic responses beyond the verbal. And, you know, he spurred me to think about when are young people ready to engage. And this time, timed with a case that we had been brought to our attention by a local partner about a young person who had significant sexual trauma who said that they wanted help, but every time they were in a place to get help, they ran. And people's frustration. And putting those two thoughts together really started to say, well, why should young people be prepared to get treatment on our time frame, right? And why do we use words like therapy resistant, right? How do we really engage young people? They come into the program, what is our expectation? That they start talking about their deepest harm, their most shameful moments within the first week or so with a stranger. And it really, what was probably obvious to a million other people, sort of blew the top of my head off a little bit around how do we practice real engagement with young people to get them to a place where they feel safe enough to start doing the work. What's the pre-work, which is probably the most important, that we need to do from a harm reduction standpoint? How do we help young people reduce their own harm so that they are safe enough and feel secure enough that they can start looking at what has happened to them and how they got there? And I think that we don't do a good enough job. I personally haven't done a good enough job in thinking about program design and engagement to really focus on that first few weeks, months, to get a young person and tolerate their ambivalence, their distrust, their anxiety around, if I get quiet enough internally, am I going to be flooded with images and memories that are so disturbing that I cannot tolerate them? And does that then spur the resistance, the anger, what we call resistance, the anger, the running, which is probably actually protective? And how do we get our systems and our people to truly meet young people where they're at, right? That's one of the fundamental, I'm a social worker by training, it's a fundamental requirement is that we meet clients where they're at. Well, that takes tremendous patience and a willingness to tolerate their intolerance. And our systems are not patient. And we're not patient with young people. And we look for them to move faster than they probably are ready. So I'm going to offer for everybody to be thinking about. We have some great harm reduction trainings coming up. What would it really mean to let young people get to safety before we ask them to engage in verbal therapy? What would we need to do? Do we have the tools? What are the tools? Is it yoga? Is it meditation? Is it aromatherapy? Is it walks in the woods, right? What is it that would allow a young person to say, okay, I'm ready to start talking with somebody about what really happened with me? And I don't have any answers. I'm going to be really clear. This is just a new thought for me. Many of you may have much better answers than I do. But as we're moving forward in this space, that's sort of the next step. What is our tools in our toolbox? What are our expectations? And have we asked young people, are you ready? Or do we just assume that because they're in our programs, they should be ready? So as we go through the next week, let's hold those thoughts in our heads, ask those questions of each other. I would love to be in a room with everybody, but I understand we have about 450 participants, so I'm not sure. We have to go to the Javits Center, I think, in order to hold this. So I just want everybody to have a great week of pondering and asking the tough questions and asking us the tough questions that we need to be asked, so that we can better situate ourselves to help you help the young people. And I do want to thank Christine and welcome Madeline back. She's back in the saddle with us, and WRI, and thank all of our presenters and wish us all a really productive week. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. I would now like to turn it over to a very dear colleague, Shelby Foster from the Office of Victim Services, who's going to share with us about the amazing work that they do.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to start by thanking Commissioner Poole and Dr. Alador and Christine for inviting me to present to you today. Just to share a little bit about the work that my agency does. For some of you, this will be an introduction. For some of you, it may be a reintroduction. In fact, I did this training just a few weeks ago at the Safe Harbor meeting when we were all in person. So I hope it's not too repetitive for those of you that may have been in attendance last week. But thank you again for inviting me to not only participate this week in this incredible week of sessions, but to also be able to participate and share the work that our agency does. So without further ado, I will share my screen and we can just jump right into it. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. So we are an independent agency, an independent executive agency. We began with the creation of the Crime Victims Compensation Board in 1966, which is probably what most of you still know us as. We did change to the Office of Victim Services in June of 2010. We have approximately 90 employees between two offices. We have our main location in Albany, and we have another office in Brooklyn. I like to start by just going over our mission statement, and we did recently modify this to really capture what we do in practice. It is the mission of our agency to provide compensation to victims of crime, their family members, and other eligible individuals in a timely, efficient, and compassionate manner. As Nina just mentioned, the trauma-informed care, we really do try to make sure that we bring that into all of the work that we do. We provide funding for direct services to victims of crime and their families throughout a network of programs across New York State. Right now, I believe we're providing funding to over 220 victim assistance programs. And we advocate for the rights and benefits for all victims of crime. A little bit about myself and what I do for the agency. I am the associate attorney for the agency, but I am also the point person for human trafficking related matters, sexual assault related matters, domestic violence related matters, and I oversee the forensic rape exam direct reimbursement program on just a legal and policy level. up until maybe about 6 months ago. Maybe we're even approaching a year at this point. Time seems to be flying now. I was involved in the day-to-day processing of the claims as well. I had a support person who would do all of the data entry, and she would report back to me any issues that she was seeing in those claims. So the processing of those claims has shifted to our compensation unit, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we work through the slides. But I am still very much involved in that program as well, and we will talk a little bit about that. As I mentioned, the victim assistance programs, we fund over 200, 220, I think the slide could be updated. They cover the entire state, and many counties actually have several programs. The VAPs that work in those programs can provide direct services to victims at the local level and can also assist them in filing a claim with the Office of Victim Services. We have 2 separate programs. We have our Forensic Rape Exam Direct Reimbursement Program, which is the one I was just telling you about in overseeing. And then we have our regular compensation program. And that is probably, I think, where most of you will find the information I'm going to share with you today most helpful. But I do want to spend just a couple of moments talking about the FRE program and reminding everyone that this is an available resource as well. The rules that govern this program are found in our executive law. This program dates back to 2005, and it was designed to ease the payment for forensic rape exams and to provide quality exams by knowledgeable practitioners, right? So we want the hospitals to be, and providers, to be providing these exams to these victims, and we want to make sure that they're getting quality care. So if we can aid in that mission by providing the reimbursement for it, that's what we would like to do, and that's what the legislation is intended to do. It's really designed to give the victim the ability to choose. So anytime you can assist in empowering the victim and giving them options and making it feel as though they're involved in the decisions that are impacting them, I think that that's something we should all try to focus on and carry with us as we do this work. So it's designed to give the victim that ability to choose. I have insurance, but I don't want to use it. Or I don't have insurance and I can't afford to pay for this out of my pocket. So I want the Office of Victim Services to pay for my examination. So this does apply to all New York State accredited hospitals and licensed healthcare providers. The requirement for them is that they must advise the victim of their option to use this program. If a victim chooses to use it, then they sign a 1-page claim form and the hospital has to submit it to OVS for reimbursement. It's available to all victims of sexual assault, regardless of where the assault occurred. A victim can be assaulted outside of New York State, but if they come here for their examination, then this program could assist them. Sorry, I just noticed my camera was moving around a little bit. That might be annoying for most of you, so hopefully that adjustment just helped. One thing I like to point out about this program is that there is no requirement that a victim consent to any portion of evidence collection to be eligible for reimbursement under this program. So a victim may present to an emergency room with a suspected sexual assault and they just want to be seen physically. They don't want any evidence collection. They want to be tested for STDs. They want a pregnancy test. That is eligible for reimbursement under this program. And the reimbursement also is intended to include HIV prophylaxis medication when appropriate. In the interest of not taking up too much time today going through all of the rules of the program, because that's not really the purpose of me being here today. We do have 2 different methods of HIV PEP reimbursement. If a victim is under the age of 18, they are eligible for the entire regimen to be reimbursed through the FRE program. If a victim is age 18 or older, they are eligible for the initial 7-day starter pack to be covered through the FRE reimbursement, and then they would have to file a claim with our compensation program to get the remainder reimbursed for them through that program. That distinction was laid out in the statute that went into effect in June of 2020 when it became possible for us to begin including the full regimen for some of this population. And something to keep in mind too about this program is this is payment in full. There's no balance billing to the victim or their insurance if the victim chooses to use this program to pay for their assault examination. So compensation, this is probably the one that most of you will learn the most from and take the most away from. And this actually, my being here today started with a conversation that Nina and I had maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago at this point. Like I said, time is flying by. Where we started talking about what our office can offer a trafficking victim and how to access that reimbursement or the assistance that our office can provide. And we started talking about the possibility that maybe many of you didn't know what we were able to provide rather. So that is how I got here today. And thank you again, Nina, for the opportunity to do this. We find that the claims coming into our agency now, again, they are self-reported. So if a victim chooses to self-report on their claim that they are a trafficking victim, then we can categorize them as such. But they may find that they're reporting as a DV victim or a sexual assault victim, as opposed to really considering what they're experiencing trafficking. So when we do a data sort in our claims to determine how many claims we're getting from human trafficking victims, keep that in mind that this is just those that are self-reporting that they're trafficking victims. The numbers tend to be pretty low. And our colleagues at OTDA and DCJS, they oversee the confirmation process in New York, where they would get applications from service providers in addition to law enforcement, and they, based on the narrative that's provided to them, will determine whether this person can be confirmed as a trafficking victim in New York State. And when we talk about the number of victims that they're confirming in New York versus the number of claim applications we're getting to the compensation program, it seems there's a real disconnect. So I would like to, I'd like to plug our agency and plug what we have to offer to trafficking victims, and reminding all of you here today that we are available to you. So I'll run through the compensation program. Again, I don't want to take up too much of anyone's time. I know we've got an exciting week ahead, but I think that you'll find this information quite helpful. So the compensation program is designed to provide substantial financial relief to victims of crime and their families by paying unreimbursed crime-related expenses. One thing to keep in mind is we are the payer of last resort, so any awards under our program have to be reduced by the amount of any other kinds of insurance, except for those claims that are being paid under the FRE program. So that's one of the distinctions between the two programs. The FRE program says no insurance ever. In fact, if you do bill the patient's insurance against their wishes, that's a violation of New York state law, and that becomes a more serious matter. The compensation program requires that a patient use their insurance first. There is no way around that because of this payer of last resort rule. So in order for a victim to seek assistance through the compensation program, they would have to use their insurance first, and then we can reimburse out-of-pocket expenses, co-pays, co-insurance, deductibles, etc. To receive reimbursement, a crime victim must submit a completed and signed OVS application form, meet the eligibility requirements, and have a compensable out-of-pocket loss or have the potential to incur one at a later time. And I think that that's important to keep in mind. Some of these victims may not have a loss right now, but you would want to submit a claim application and at least get an eligibility determination. So if in the future they choose to, say, seek counseling, counseling is something that we will cover. And New York is actually the only state in the nation that has unlimited reimbursed medical expenses, and that does include counseling. So we can see some of these expenses coming for a person's lifetime. That is something that we have not capped, and we are proud to say that. So just a little bit about eligibility for the program, and you'll note the very last bullet here gets specific to labor or sex trafficking, and that is only those that are committed on or after November 1st of 2007, because that's when trafficking became a crime here in New York State. So I want you to keep that in mind, that these are not ands, they're ors. So we have victims of crimes who are physically injured, or a victim who's disabled under the age of 18 or 60 or older, child victims or children who witness a crime on their parent, guardian. They are also eligible for reimbursement for some services. Again, in the interest of not taking up too much time today, we could be here for hours if I were to get into the specifics of all of the eligibility and what needs to be met for each of the different scenarios, but I will spare you that information for now, and if you'd like to follow up afterwards, I'm happy to do that. You can go to our website for more information, and we'll touch on that on the last slide. I've provided some contact information. Certain victims of unlawful imprisonment, dissemination of an unlawful surveillance image, kidnapping, stalking, some of those more DV-related crimes that don't tend to involve a physical injury. Harassment is another one. In my position here at OBS, I do review all of the claims through the compensation program that are DV-related, that do not involve a physical injury, before they are denied and sent a denial letter. I review them, and I review the circumstances as well as the different sections of the law that we can cover. We have accepted charges in the executive law that say we can cover these crimes, these enumerated offenses. And I review the circumstances to determine whether they could fall under one of those charges that we can accept. And we do our best to try to help victims as we can. So those are an additional population of victims that may not be able to access services except for these enumerated offenses that we've laid out in our legislation. And then, as I mentioned, the last bullet here, what most of you will probably be dealing with are the victims of labor or sex trafficking. In order to get an eligibility determination, it's based on both the victim and the crime. So the victim components will include cooperation with law enforcement and OBS, a physical injury unless they meet one of those exceptions, age, disability, again, going back to that last slide where we talked about the different types of eligibility requirements. The one thing I want everyone to keep in mind about the cooperation with law enforcement is that we realize victims of human trafficking are a different population and we treat them differently. So while we require cooperation with law enforcement, if a victim chooses to not report to law enforcement, that's okay. That is a general prereq for accessing our services. However, for certain populations of victims, we allow other reports in lieu of reporting to law enforcement. So for example, sexual assault victims can use that they went to a hospital for a forensic rape exam in lieu of filing a police report. For trafficking victims, we will use the confirmation letter that they get from OTDA and DCJS as their criminal justice agency report in lieu of having to file a report with law enforcement. That claim has to be filed within 1 year of the crime. And we do allow for justification for a delay in reporting or filing. And that's quite common. People don't know about our agency. People don't know about what we have to offer. Sometimes people don't disclose until more than a year after the crime happened to them. So that is very common that we get justifications for delays, and we generally accept them. Some of the compensation benefits for trafficking victims could include the cost of repair or replacement of essential person or property lost, damaged, or destroyed as the direct result of the crime. So I am really pleased to announce 3 weeks ago when I gave this presentation, the essential personal property cap was $500. Since then, effective claims submitted to our office October 6th and thereafter, that cap has now been increased to $2,500. So we are really excited to announce that. We do have a $100 cap on cash reimbursement. That did not change. That is still $100. As I mentioned, medical expenses and counseling reimbursements, we have no limit, and that doesn't include transportation expenses. I noticed that Cassidy and I provided this training together a few weeks ago, and she really focused on the compensation benefits because she's one of the supervisors in that area. So I noticed as I was looking at the slides this morning in preparation that we've included transportation expenses here on the counseling line and not on the medical. And I don't want you to think that that's a distinction. We actually do cover transportation expenses for medical as well. We can cover counseling for family members as well, spouse, child, stepchild, parent of the victim. Relocation expenses for security systems, those are two that I imagine are probably quite popular with this particular victim population. We have a cap of $2,500 on relocation expenses, and security systems are not capped, but we do provide a reasonableness standard here. It's got to be a reasonable cost. We do not cover the cost of monthly monitoring of those systems, but we do cover the cost of purchasing the system and installation. And one last thing I'd like to plug is our OVS Resource Connect. So you might hear the terms interchangeably. We call it Resource Connect, we call it Concern Center, but this is something that we have put on our website. It's probably about a year now, where you can enter your concern. So whatever issue you're experiencing now. So Resource Connect allows victims to enter a concern that they have, anything. They want to find out where to go for help getting an order of protection. They can put in order of protection here, and it will pull up anywhere within their designated mileage. It goes from 5 to 50, I believe, miles away from your location. And it will provide a list of the programs around you that can assist you with the concern that you've indicated. And I am certain that some of you work with programs that may be found on this website, as you may be associated with programs that receive funding through the Office of Victim Services, and that's the programs that are listed here on Resource Connect.
There was one question in the chat, so I am going to just ask you, because I could be wrong, but it seems like a fairly straightforward question. And that is, how can we use our client's OTDA tracking number on the OVS claim?
So that's actually a great question. And I think Cassidy was able to better answer that the last time we met at the Safe Harbor meeting. So if you're going through the portal, and this is where I'm a little bit outside of my arena, so I apologize if I'm not giving you the answer that you're hoping for. If you're going through the portal, it is my understanding that there is a way to list that now as the law enforcement report number, criminal justice agency report number. You can put that tracking number there. If you're using the fact that they went for a sexual assault exam, you can use anything in that field. I have found people use the date of service, they use the medical record number, as long as you can just enter some number in that field. So I hope that answers your question.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And I am trying to get back to where we were.
Here we go.
Great. In case you wanted to write down the website before I skipped past that, and now here is the contact information. So it is our website, www.ovs.ny.gov. And that's also our 800 number. We have a phone tree, so if you listen to the prompts, it can better direct you to where it is that you are trying to get. So if you have a question about something medical, if you have, there is a prompt for that. If you want to talk to someone about the FRE program, there's a prompt for that. So feel free to use that 800 number and just listen to the prompts. There is a prompt for legal. So if you find that you have a question about eligibility, if you want to talk to me specifically because you had a question about whether this should even be submitted to the office, I'm happy to do that. So please feel free to reach out. You can reach me through this 800 number as well.
Thank you so much, Shelby. I appreciate you being here. These are great resources that many of the folks that we work with could utilize, and we want to really ensure that the folks we're working with are getting all of the services that they so rightfully deserved. And Shelby and Cassidy are great resources for that. And so I appreciate your time again, Shelby, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. I hope that you have a great week. I'm really looking forward to being a participant as well. So thank you. I hope you all enjoy the week, and let me know if I can be of any help.
Thank you. All right, we're going to dive right in. As stated earlier, my name is Christine Anderson, and I am the Anti-Trafficking and Runaway and Homeless Youth Coordinator here at OCFS in the Division of Youth Development and Partnerships for Success. In this role, I also serve as the Program Manager for the Safe Harbor New York program, and this is our 7th Anti-Trafficking Summit, 3rd year doing it virtually, which allows us to host many more people. And as Nina stated earlier, we had over 450 people register for this summit, which is amazing. I exceeded any expectation I could have ever had. So thank you. It's such a testament to the importance of the work that we do and your dedication to that work. As is with the nature of our work, things change rapidly and abruptly, and we often have to pivot. I'm sad to announce that unfortunately Nathan Earl, who was this morning's presenter, fell ill and let me know last night that he's going to be unable to present this morning. We are disappointed and we hope to reschedule with him on a later date, and we will make everyone who registered for his session aware of when that is. But being as adaptable as we are, this morning I'm going to do a quick human trafficking and CSEC 101. We understand that for some of you, this is not maybe the best use of your time, or it's not exactly what you came here for. We completely understand. But if you are newer to the work or could just use a really great refresher, please feel free to stay with us and join us. All right. So how can we identify, support, and prevent trafficking of young people? Okay, so here are some learning objectives we have for this morning. I am going to go through this presentation fairly quickly. So if you would like this maybe more in depth, please reach out to Shannon Lukowski or myself, and we can possibly schedule a time to provide that for you and your staff. I'm going to go back and go over the objectives real quick. We're going to define the elements of trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation of children, which we know as CSEC, identify red flags and what makes youth more vulnerable to these crimes, discuss how to use trauma-informed principles in our interactions with them, know ways to support them, and if we have time, go through some engagement opportunities. So as we know, our work focuses on 2 main components, that is trafficking and CSEC. I'm going to ask folks to put in the chat what they believe the definitions of trafficking and CSEC are. And Shannon is going to help me monitor the chat. Do we have any? What do we think it is? What do we think the legal definition of it is? What is our own personal definition? How do we interpret that?
Christine, we have a few here. They're coming in fast and furious. I don't know if you can see them or you'd rather me read them for you.
Go for it. You can read them.
All right, so we have one from Emily Martin who says the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. We have another one that says using children for monetary gains. Trafficking is when you are taken against your will to be a sex slave.
Okay.
We have another one saying forcing or manipulating human beings into sexual and labor exploitation for profit.
These are great answers.
Taking someone against their will to have them do sexual favors. They are still coming in. Do you want more or do you want to stop there?
We're going to power through, but those are all great guesses. And I think the first one hit it right on the head. The use of force, fraud, or coercion, and one person benefits from the either sex trade, sorry guys, it's been a long morning, sex work or labor work of another. So when we think of force, fraud, and coercion, I think 2 of those seem to be very easily defined, right? So when we think of coercion, could the group kind of brainstorm a little bit and put into the chat what they think of some examples of coercion could be? So when you hear the word coercion, what could an example of that be? What do you think that looks like? in regards to trafficking?
Some answers we have coming in are using threats on family, promises or gifts, making threats to the person, threatening the family, money or gifts, holding the housing as collateral. It's a good one.
Oh, that's a good one.
Under false pretense, another threatening the family, blackmail.
These are great.
Another one just came in, withholding something of value. Coercion may be in the form of physical and verbal threats of harm, threats of disclosure to immigration. We've got some good answers here.
Those are great. So yeah, it's basically trying to using tactics to get somebody to do something you want falsely. So it might be something like, as stated, if you don't do this for me, I'm going to get your sister and talk them into doing this, or I'll disclose to your family, or I'll share the video that you sent me or the photos that you sent me. It's a little bit harder to, sometimes people struggle with this, with understanding or proving it, but we don't necessarily need to. And this is just a quick breakdown. CSEC has been recognized as a form of child sexual abuse. So these are just the four examples of different types of CSEC. When we talk about child sex trafficking, which I think is what we are most familiar with, child pornography, stripping and dancing, working in a massage parlor, parties, sex parties, things of that nature. And I think this next slide really focuses on the key components of our work, right? Being very mindful of the language we use and the verbiage we use when not only working with young people, but working with other professionals in the field, using the language of trafficked youth versus teen prostitute. There's actually no such thing as a teen prostitute. They're not old enough to consent to prostitution. They're not old enough to make that choice themselves. And I just want to do another quick engagement opportunity. Why do you think it's so important to utilize the language? And I think this is a really great kickoff for our week of using the verbiage of survivor versus victim.
We have an answer saying because it can be triggering, it empowers them, and by them, I think that they are referring to the survivor. Victim puts the blame on the person. It gives hope, centers the strength in the survivor. Many don't see themselves as victims. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is empowerment, right? If someone's a victim, they often feel helpless or taken advantage of or hurt or any of those things. If you use the language survivor, you think of overcoming something, you feel strong. Let's do the same activity for rescue and support, because I feel like this is also super important to the work that we do.
We don't have anything coming in for that yet, Christine, but I do want to bring attention to a comment that was put in the chat that I really like, and I think we may take for a future training. It says, in referring to the victim survivor, that the person has survived something and is present. So it's more future oriented and positive. And I really like that.
I love that.
And now going back to the rescue versus support, we have rescue is very saviorist. They actually go hand in hand, versus support gives autonomy. It says it gives the mindset that we are here to support them through rather than save them. Yeah. Rescue is doing something to another. Support is being alongside the person.
Yes, and I think that's a great spot to pick up on, because it goes along with that empowerment, right? If we are rescuing, and I'm doing air quotes, which you can't see, we get to take ownership of that. If we are providing support and that person is doing the work themselves, then they get ownership of it. Again, empowering them. And this is just some national statistics for you. These are a little outdated and need to be updated, but I think they're still very pertinent. but I want to move past this real quick and show you these statistics. So this is our amazing safe harbor data from 2020. We're still working on finalizing 2021. And it gives a breakdown per county. So if you are a safe harbor folk, one of our colleagues on the call, you can see that we take the data you submit to us and we do work with it. And this kind of just shows down in each county the number of youth who were deemed at risk and those who actually met the federal definition. And one of the reasons that I believe we at OCFS really like to share this county level data is because we often hear, oh, well, that doesn't happen here, or that's a New York City problem, or that only happens, you know, in large cities, and I live in a very safe area. You might live in a very safe area. However, trafficking does not discriminate. It happens everywhere. It can happen to anyone. So we really find that this slide, when we are out in the field and we are training other professionals or other organizations who work with young people, that this slide can be very, very powerful. So if you are interested in this data, all of it is available on the OCFS website, and we can put that in the chat for you. Now we're going to talk about identifying survivors. And I do know I'm going quickly. I'm just trying to be mindful of time. So on the screen, you see a list of characteristics. So the wanting of developing romantic relationships, feeling insecure, conflict, the desire for independence, the need for attention and affection, the goal of testing boundaries and being a risk taker. If you're looking at this list of characteristics, feel free to type in the chat. Who are we describing? Who could we be describing, I should say?
Pre-teenagers is a response we just got.
Preteens, okay.
Anyone.
That is a very valid answer. Yes. Yes.
Everyone.
Right. I think we all feel this way sometimes.
We're getting very consistent everyone and anyone's.
Yeah, so I think that is not a wrong answer. Yes, most of us want a lot of these things. Sometimes we feel insecure. We all experience conflict. We all want to feel close to people. Sometimes we feel misunderstood. But this is specifically addressing preteens and young adults, which is the core population of which Safe Harbor works. But yes, you're all correct that this could be anyone and everyone at any given point in your life, right? We all transition, and our personalities and our feelings change as we grow. So I also find that this slide and the next one are also super powerful. Reason being, we have seen or I should say this, I started doing this work in 2019 at the end. And I will be the first to admit that the only knowledge I had prior to coming on board to this role was what I had read in like People magazine or the newspaper, what I had seen on television or in movies, which we all know is a very sensationalized and mostly inaccurate description of what trafficking is. I think many people think trafficking only happens to females. It only happens when you are being, like caged up, or you're in handcuffs, or they're like, with Liam Neeson and taken, and they're like moving you across the country. And we all know that that is not accurate, right? So I think this slide is also super powerful, and that it really displays that, as you all said earlier, anyone and everyone could be a survivor of trafficking, whether you are male, female, gender fluid, you are homosexual, heterosexual, transgender, you are African American, you are Caucasian, you are Asian, you are Latina, you are straight, you are poor, you are rich. Again, as we go back to, it does not discriminate. This is the other one that I find powerful. Who could be a trafficker? Really, anyone. We know from stories in the news that many of the groups that are reflected on the slide have trafficked. Professional athletes we've seen, employers. Is there anyone missing? You can put it in the chat if you think there's anyone not listed on here. I know that there's one that jumps out to me because of a news story I saw earlier. Elected officials, parents, R. Kelly, that's been sensationalized in the news. Not sensationalized, that's been on the news a lot. Musicians, yep. The one that comes to mind for me is teachers. We often see news stories about educators who are having inappropriate relationships with either their students or they're a coach, and they're having inappropriate relationships that benefit them with their athletes or their students. Yes, all correct answers. And another staggering statistic, 45%, and again, this research is a little old, 45% of all CSEC cases are male. You may be familiar with this slide. This is the very famous genderbread person. We did learn, I believe it was last year, that there is now a gender unicorn. So I'm working to update this slide with a gender unicorn because I do feel like it is so much more of a better graphic. And it's just a great tool if you work with young people to really explain it. And I find that adults actually really like it too. Okay, we know that there are 4 different types of child sex trafficking. Family or familial, which some of you mentioned. It could be a parent exploiting their child. It could be an aunt or uncle. It could be a sibling. Probably the one most people are familiar of, the pimp and, I can't think of the language right now, dynamic, gang trafficking, and survival sex, which means the young person is trading sex acts or exploitive acts for basic needs such as housing, food. It could be a drug addiction. It could be clothing. It could be a lot of other things. Anything they need to provide themselves with their basic needs. And there's also 4 types of child labor trafficking. Again, familial, landlord, employer. So that could be domestic. So it means that the person maybe lives and is a domestic worker for their person, or the person lives in a building owned by, a very landlord-tenant dynamic, but is forced to work in order to maintain their housing, a labor contractor, or industry-funded aid groups. All right, let's dive into some red flags. Again, I'm going to make this an interactive element of this morning's very quick training. So what do you think are some red flags of trafficking that we should be on the lookout for, or that we may see in our work with young people? That would make our sirens go off, that would make our ears perk up. And again, I just want to reiterate that these are not necessarily full-blown indicators that specifically determine that the young person is being trafficked, but they're just stuff to be on the lookout for.
We have tattoos, bling, and high fashion items. Youth has a lot of cash or new and expensive items. Frequent running away. Unexplained purchases. Someone just noted like foster youth are at high risk. Multiple phones.
Yep.
Truancy and grades dropping. Oh, this is a good one. Loss of documents such as their license.
Yes.
Multiple hotel cards. That's actually one I haven't seen before, and that's a good one. We've got alcohol and substance abuse. Frequently leaving placement without consent and returning in disarray.
Yeah, these are all great. And all could be right? Red flags that make you think something's up, right? So is it necessarily abnormal for a young person to maybe have Nikes or an iPhone? As the mother of a 17-year-old who frequents school events, not necessarily. However, if you work with a young person and you are fully aware that, the maybe financial status or what have you, or mom or dad or their parent and guardian's employment wouldn't allow for those things, and the young person won't disclose to you where they came from, or the story just doesn't make sense, then it's something to make your ears perk up, right? So when things just don't make sense, right? All of a sudden this kid has come to school and now has a new iPhone and a gold chain and Air Force Ones and all of these crazy things, but they don't have money for lunch, or it's new and abrupt and they're very hesitant to talk to you about it. It's definitely something to look out for. Same thing with, as said in the chat, all of a sudden their nails are done. They have eyelash extensions. Their hair is newly redone. Anything like that, yeah. Drastic change in behavior is a key one, right? We also know that frequently running away and then coming back either with these new and expensive belongings, or now their nails are done or what have you, also red flags. So these are things that should just kind of make your ears perk up a little and maybe want to make you more engaged with that young person and have a conversation. As Shannon said, the one about loss of documents, that's a great one. Or if all of a sudden they don't have access to documents that most teenagers or young people would have. They don't have a birth certificate or a social security card. They don't have any kind of identification, or they just can't get access to it, or someone is holding it from them and won't give it to them. Also should make your ears perk up. How traffickers attempt to recruit and control youth. We talk about this a lot, and Nina touched on it earlier, right? The evolution of the recruitment. Things that started from, Backpage or Craigslist. And now they have evolved into the use of social media and games like Roblox and Minecraft to recruit young people. The rise of the traffickers using social media to recruit young people. And by recruit, we mean that they build a relationship, they build a rapport with this young person. It could be false promises of a recording deal. Many young people are very into the music industry, right? Oh, I saw the video you posted of yourself singing. I have connections in the record label industry or the music industry. We should connect, and I can help you get started. Similar with the modeling industry, right? You're a beautiful girl, or you're a very handsome guy. I think you can make a lot of money as a model. Why don't you come to my studio? And I'm using studio in air quotes that can't see, and I can take some pictures for you. And then when the young person gets there, it's obviously not legit, and the photos could be a little scandalous. So traffickers use a lot of different methods. Some of them are blatant and some of them are not. So social media safety and social media awareness is key to the work that we do. Summit 2 years ago was all about internet safety and social media safety and awareness. So if that's something you're interested in, please feel free to go and check out those trainings as I shamelessly plug our previous work. So what do we do? If a youth is in immediate danger, we call 911, right? Immediate, their health and safety is at risk, you can call 911, partner with law enforcement. If they reside with the trafficker or their trafficker is a person legally responsible, you can call the SCR and register a report. If the young person doesn't identify, this is a big one. How do you think, if you can type your answers in the chat, we address when young people do not identify as being exploited or trafficked? What are some things, how can we gauge or engage with the young person? We talked about it very briefly. Nina mentioned it in our opening if you were here for it. Suggestions. Young person thinks everything is normal. Again, I'm using normal in air quotes. Nothing seems off to them. This is just the way it is.
So you're getting a few responses that are similar, using their language to build rapport or intervene, creating a safe place to support them and build trust.
Yeah, and I think using their language, I love that, because if we talk to young people like we know better, they're going to completely shut down. So meeting them where they're at, using language that is talking with them and not at them is so important. And go back to creating a safe place to support them and build that trust. We had a presentation last year at Summit, and one of the presenters, Mitch from Safe Harbor of the Finger Lakes, I remember him distinctly saying, when a youth trusts you, they'll talk with you. So building that trust, building that rapport to them, understanding that it takes time, right? It's not going to take an hour and 45 minutes with you in your office. Everything is not going to be solved. So you have to really be patient, like Nina talked about earlier, and really build that relationship with them so that they do feel like they can trust you and share things with you. What about if you say something to a young person in regards to this or anything actually, and it's pretty apparent you've upset them? How do we handle those situations? And I think sometimes for those of us who are adults or professionals, this is something that isn't as easy as it really could be. You know, every conversation we have with a young person isn't going to be rainbows and unicorns, right? So if we trigger them, if we make them upset, if they shut down, what can we do? Exactly. We apologize. And it's so simple, right? Recognize it, acknowledge it, and apologize for it, and learn from it, and then adapt your conversation the next time. Perfect. All right. So what is trauma? Trauma is something that overwhelms the individual's ability to use normal coping mechanisms to adapt to a situation and disrupts an individual's frame of reference, so their beliefs about themselves and the world. I love this example we do in this training. So two individuals, let's say, are at the mall in the food court, and a man with a trench coat runs through and opens the trench coat, and he's naked, and he's now streaking through the mall. One person reacts by laughing it off and being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened, and kind of like moving on with their day. And the other person is so uncomfortable and taken aback that maybe they need to leave very abruptly. They just can't be there anymore. What could be the difference between one or the other? Why would one person react so differently to something like that? Most likely because they've experienced some type, or they could have experienced some type of sexual trauma or exploitive trauma. Now in the chat, right, a trigger, past life experiences. Yes, I might have a delay in my chat. Sorry, guys. What are some, if you're working with somebody, you're engaged in conversation with either a young person or an adult, what are some behaviors that that person may exhibit that show you that they've possibly experienced some kind of trauma? Okay, self-harm. You may notice that they have cuts. Shannon, do you see any others? Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, no problem. I see eating disorders, bruises. Ooh, this is a word I'm not familiar with. Maybe you are, Christine. Hypersexualization. Okay, that makes more sense. She first wrote it as hypertextualization. And I thought it was a new term that we hadn't heard yet, but it's actually hypersexualization.
Yes.
Yeah, we're up to date on our chat.
All right. Right? They seem anxious, they quickly, like, their feelings escalate, all of those things, right? They might tap their foot incessantly, they might fidget, like wring their fingers or their hands, they might be sweating, they don't have good hygiene. If this is a student who is normally very calm and all of a sudden they are like flying off the deep end at every little thing, again, those sirens go off, your ears perk up, you know that something is off. Briefly, I want to talk about safety plan because I think that this is a key element of the work that we do. And something that I think is so important and critical and goes with the aspect of voice is that the young person should be an active participant in the creation of their safety plan. We know that the more a young person is engaged in either their safety planning or their life, the more likely they are to be successful. So you might think one thing is a really great aspect of a safety plan, but if the young person isn't taking ownership of it and the young person disagrees, they're probably not going to be on board with that. The other aspect, it's ongoing and fluid, right? It's a safety plan is not a one and done. It needs to be looked back on to see if it's being utilized. If it's being utilized successfully, great. How do we move on to step 2? If it's not, what do we need to change? Something we already talked about, is it realistic? If they won't do it, don't include it. Avoiding and reducing risk. I think that's a great segue to this afternoon's presentation about harm reduction. We cannot always eliminate risk completely. How can we reduce that? Maybe it's if you are in such and such a situation, you're going to call this person, not don't go there. If you go there and you're feeling unsafe, call your case planner or a safe, trusted adult. You're not only addressing their physical safety, but you're also addressing their emotional safety. And we are non-judgmental. And things to think about, and the young person to think about while you're creating that safety plan. What can you do anytime, anywhere to help you remain calm when you're feeling stressed out or anxious? For some young people, this is as easy as taking some deep breaths and counting to 10. It might be listening to music or drawing or writing in a journal, or typing in their notes app on their phone. My daughter informed me that journals are not cool. I didn't know that, but she said a lot of times if she has a thought that she needs to get out, she'll just open the notes app on her phone and type it in there, which I thought that's great because you always have your phone with you. You might not always have a pad and paper, or she can pop in her AirPods and listen to music or headphones, or even just turn it on, go for a walk. Who can you call who will listen and support you? What trusted adults do you have in your life? And maybe it's not an adult. Maybe it's another young person who is a safe person, who is assisting them in making good choices. Could be their best friend, a schoolmate, a cousin, a coworker, as many young people have jobs, or a teammate. If you are feeling unsafe where you are, where can you go if you feel unsafe? Is there a local RHY crisis shelter you can go to? Do you have a trusted family member or friend who has a home where you feel safe? And then what happens next? If this happens, then what? If you go to your safe place and no one's home and you can't get in, then what do you do? It's always good to have a plan B or a plan C, and maybe even a plan D. So here's just some examples: important phone numbers, a list of adults who are trusted and safe, some sexual health resources, maybe where Planned Parenthood is or how to reach them, exit strategies. If you're in a place and all of a sudden something bad happens, what can you do? And ways to manage stress. 2 big laws we like to touch on, and then I'm going to stop there because I think it's a good stopping point. The Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act. This required OCFS to create the screening process for young people. And then the Safe Harbor for Exploited Children Act. New York was actually the first state that recognized that this was a form of child abuse. So New York has always been on the forefront of work for this. So we are very, very proud of that. And now I'm going to stop because I think we're all done for the morning. And if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat or the Q&A. I see a question in the Q&A that says, do sex workers see themselves as victims? And I think that's a great question. And I don't feel that I am the right person to answer that question. I think that's really, I think it's something really profound to think about. And I think it would depend on each individual and where they're at in their lives and in their recovery and in their growth. But I think it's something to always kind of think about. How do we print out the slides for my presentation? I will send out materials. Probably next week, we will send out materials for all of the presentations so we can get them to you. That is not a problem. If you want to ensure you get them, you can email me separately. I will put my email in the chat, or you can email the human trafficking mailbox and we can get them to you. I'm going to pause for a couple more minutes to see if there's any other question. Can you explain the difference between CSE versus CSEC versus CIT? So the CIT, the CSE-IT, is a screening tool. I'm not sure what you mean by CSE, unfortunately. But the CSE-IT, which is mentioned in the chat, is a screening tool that is used to screen young people for trafficking and exploitation risk. Very similar to our rapid and comprehensive. If I didn't answer your question correctly, feel free to, you can either email me offline or correct me in the chat. But I know the CIT is a screening tool. What else can we do to intervene once a safe harbor referral has been submitted and the youth continues to be victimized and is non-compliant with support efforts? That's a great question. I think the best thing you can do is to keep at it, right? We know that it can take an excessive, I mean, to us, it's excessive, a very long time for a young person to be ready, you know, as Nina mentioned earlier, to really be ready to get support and help. And the more we are there, the more we show that we care for them and that we support them and that we want them to be safe and that we're not going to walk away from them and that we have faith in them and that we love them no matter what, the more engagement and the more you're going to build that trust and rapport. So I understand it's frustrating. I understand we want to do everything in our power, but they have to be ready. Consistent to predictability. I'm not sure. You're welcome. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. If you think of something after the fact, feel free to email me or email us at the human trafficking mailbox. Again, the data that we shared, the statewide data from 2020 and previous years is available on the OCFS website. We will include a link to that with all of the materials. I am so grateful for all of you for pivoting with me this morning and being good sports and sticking it out. You know, it's just the nature of our work. You have to be fluid and go with the flow, right? So thank you so much. Oh, thanks, Jeanette. It's nice to see you. And I look forward to this afternoon's presentation on harm reduction. It's a great one. I've had the privilege of participating in it prior, and I think it's going to be a big hit. So I hope everyone enjoys their little break, and I will see you at 1 o'clock. Have a great morning.